And thank you very much for joining us this morning for the exciting launch event of the UK NPM's recommendations database. I will just now run through the brilliant speakers that we have joining us today. Firstly, we're joined by Elina Steinerte, Vice Chair of NPMs at the UN Subcommittee on the Prevention of Torture and former Chair Rapporteur of the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. We'll then see a live demonstration of the reporting dashboard by Chelsea Keenan and Sarah Rennie from the NPM Central team. They've been working on and populating the database for most of this year. And we'll then hear from Professor Nicholas Hardwick, former chair of the UK National Preventive Mechanism while HM Chief Inspector of Prisons, and now Professor at Royal Holloway. We'll then hear from Alice O'Fee, who is delivery lead for solution design at Robiquity, who have been integral to the dashboard that you will see today. And we're then joined by Jacqui Durkin, Chief Inspector of Criminal Justice, Northern Ireland, and by Rob Linham, Deputy Director, Rights and Public Law at the Ministry of Justice. Finally, our own chair of the UK National Preventive Mechanism, Sherry Ralph, will be moderating our Q&A panel at the end of the event today, before the head of the NPM, Sam Gluckstein, gives some closing remarks. So before all that, and to launch the launch event, I will hand you over to Sam Gluckstein, head of the UK NPM and the Database Project Director.
Well, thank you very much, Jane, for that introduction. And colleagues, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We've got colleagues from all around the world joining us today, and it really is both heartening and thrilling to see so much interest in this piece of work, which we have been beavering away at for the better part of 2.5 years to get to a stage where we can launch this project. So it really is a delight to see so much interest in this piece of work. Today, I think we're launching, and I can be a little bit prone to hyperbole, but I think we're launching a giant leap in transparency for oversight and scrutiny of places of deprivation of liberty. We are publishing a dashboard and database which captures all recommendations broadly defined and best practice from the start of 2020 to the first half of 2025. And we're going to keep that up to date in real time. What does that look like? It's 21,389 records, of which 16,391 are recommendations, broadly understood, more on that in a mo, and 4,027 examples of positive practice across all detention settings in the UK, places of deprivation of liberty in Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, and Wales. They're all thematically codified, and they're up to date in real time. A quick moment on who's here and who's joined us. Well, I'm delighted to see such broad interest. We have NPM monitors from across the UK, people that work for the 21 bodies that make up the NPM. We have international NPMs from across the world who are interested in this piece of work for their own monitoring practices. We've got parliamentarians, members of the House of Commons, House of Lords, Scottish Parliament, Northern Irish Assembly, members of government, members of the prison service across the UK, the health services across the UK, police services up and down the country, colleagues from the United Nations, Council of Europe, NGOs, policymakers. And I think that global interest and that kind of mixed interest in this piece of work is really a sign that we all actually share, whatever kind of space we're in, share the same ambition to drive standards and improvements in place of deprivation of liberty and prevent torture and ill treatment, which is the raison d'etre of the National Preventive Mechanism. A bit about the UK NPM, for those that don't know about us. We are around 3,500 people that carry out the OPCAT mandate in the UK. We are 21 independent bodies. And as I say, we make around 5,000 recommendations a year. And that point sort of matters because that brings us to why we have this database. When I came into this job, I realized that if there was one person or one team of people that should know all of that output across the UK as a multi-body NPM, it's probably me, it's probably my team. But it was impossible to do that because there's just so much of it. It's a great benefit of our model, that breadth of scrutiny, but it's important that that value of that breadth is really felt and learned. So we've built this database to fix that, to bring a single source of truth to all recommendations and best practice across the NPM. I think it has multiple use cases, and we're going to hear about that in the live demonstration. It helps me and my team. It helps us understand what the key thematic areas are across the country in places of deprivation of liberty. It helps us know where to focus our limited resources, to connect the dots between settings and countries, and to better advocate for change. I really hope it helps establishment leaders. I hope it helps governors and directors and chief execs understand where there is best practice in other places and adopt it, cross-pollinate that good practice, and also highlight issues of concern. I think it helps policymakers, and I'm delighted we have so many joining us this morning. NGOs to really help hold feet to fire and bring that accountability, which is all of our role. Academics, the media, monitors. When you're thinking of a recommendation to draft and you want to craft one, you can look in the thematic area that you're in and see what works and what doesn't, what wording is best. And I really think that's important because the role of NPMs isn't to denounce from on high, to criticize, but it's to work constructively with authorities to drive standards and drive improvements. I think we hope this tool helps findings come off the page so they're not lost in the back of PDFs, but it makes them more dynamic with improved transparency and accountability. The dashboard changes the conversation from a more reactive to a proactive model of scrutiny and oversight, addressing recommendations, sharing best practice, and helping detention authorities prioritize more strategically to see what others are doing, learn from others. To those attending and that I've spoken to in the last 2.5 years about this project, and it's probably most of you because I've spoken to almost anyone with a pulse about this, I'm so glad that you can join us and see this come into fruition. I'm going to just briefly, and I hope for your forbearance, thank a few people while I have the mic, because I would normally do this at the end, but people will drop off, and I'd like you all to hear how brilliant everyone has been to working on this. To my team, Sarah Rennie, Chelsea Keenan, Jane Kilpatrick, Catherine Moyer, Sherry Ralph, our chair, who have been phenomenal in bringing this together, and Sarah, who has been in the role coming on 3 to 4 months and has lived and breathed these recommendations since day one. She's been a real driving force, and she deserves most, if not all, of the credit for where we are today. To Alice Sophie and Tom Vine at Robiquity, their support has been really vital. To our Justice Digital team, Lindsay Hancock, George Armstrong, Paul Hope, Alex Bedford, Gary Wilson, Tony Bosworth, Josh Welsh, Sean Padley, your support has been essential to getting this off the ground. To finance support, Leslie Young, Sharon Curtis, who never get nearly enough recognition for keeping the money on track, Bill Loft, Ola Asabi, and to our speakers joining us today, Elina, Nick, Rob, Jacqui, really grateful to see your support for this piece of work. So I'll stop speaking. Thank you again. You'll see me at the end. I'm now going to hand over to Elina Steinerte, who's the United Nations Vice Chair of the Subcommittee for the Prevention of Torture for NPMs to introduce, and then we'll have a live demo of the database. Elina.
Thank you very much, Sam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues. I'm truly honored to address you on behalf of the United Nations Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture as its Vice Chair on National Preventive Mechanisms, the role which entails not only provision of support and assistance to the national preventive mechanisms worldwide, but also one which entails acting as a kind of a conduit of knowledge and experience sharing, which is why I'm particularly delighted to be at this event today to deliver these very brief opening remarks to the launch of this very exciting UK National Preventive Mechanism dashboard, which for the first time, as Sam already said, brings together the findings, the recommendations generated by the UK NPM institutions across the years, offering public access to the collective insight of the 21 independent bodies and more than 3,500 monitors working across the United Kingdom's places of deprivation of liberty. Dear colleagues, we all know that OPCAT is a very different type UN human rights treaty, different with this requirement of establishment of the national preventive mechanisms, which is the core obligation of every OPCAT state party. Now, OPCAT does not prescribe a model for the NPM, but it does prescribe the core institutional features, and it does provide the core details as to the essential characteristics of the NPM mandate, among which this system of regular visits to all places of deprivation of liberty, of course, is the key. Such visits are also the key vehicle for the prevention of torture and ill treatment as per the very system of the OPCAT, which is anchored in the obligations to prevent torture and ill treatment of Articles 2 and 16 of the Convention Against Torture. But as Sam already said so eloquently, the aim of OPCAT, aim of these visits, is not to catch out. The OPCAT's torture prevention architecture is not premised on naming and shaming and apportioning of blame. Rather, the essence of this prevention system envisaged in OPCAT is solution-focused, geared towards identifying the root causes that have enabled torture or may enable occurrences of torture and ill treatment, and addressing these so that torture and ill treatment would not occur again. And this requires a recognition that while things might not be perfect, instead of apportioning this blame, it is important to look at these root causes of these imperfections with that fundamental aim of trying to better the outcomes in the future. Some 15 years ago now, I think it was already, the Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture, when it formulated its approach to prevention, stated, and here I quote, "The prevention of torture and ill treatment embraces, or should embrace, as many as possible of those things which in a given situation can contribute towards the lessening of the likelihood or risk of torture or ill treatment occurring. Such an approach requires not only that there be compliance with relevant international obligations and standards in both form and substance, but that attention also be paid to the whole range of other factors relevant to the experience and treatment of persons deprived of their liberty, and which by their very nature will be context specific," end quote. And that's because context matters. We all know that. Context of the country, of the region, of the facility. And this is why these visits, on-site visits by the NPMs, are so crucially important, because they enable the national preventive mechanisms and the SPT to have the snapshot of that compliance with international standards, their implementation in form and in substance and in the context. This, in turn, enables tailored recommendations, because visits without recommendations might as well not take place. And for the UK NPM, an entity with over a decade of experience under its belt, there must be thousands of recommendations already made, which is an absolute goldmine in terms of wealth of knowledge and experience, and all set against these wide variety of contexts. And this is why I'm so excited about this dashboard, this fascinating tool, and I admit to having had a sneak preview of it already. It's a fascinating tool, not only to enable the UK NPM, a complex entity of 21 institutions, to look at each other's work and approaches across nations, regions, facilities, and themes, but also as a unique best practice sharing tool among the authorities and facilities, enabling them to look at each other's approaches, cross-fertilization, facilitation of methods, and empowering learning from each other's work. It is not only a unique tool for the UK NPM, for the UK institutions, but actually for the whole worldwide family of the national preventive mechanisms and for the SPT as well. This presents a wealth of knowledge and an incredible opportunity at cross-border learning. Because OPCAT is not about pointing fingers at what has gone wrong. It is about fostering an environment in which occurrences of torture and ill treatment would become impossible, which inevitably requires constant learning, experience sharing, and learning across the nations, regions, facilities, and contexts. Many congratulations, dear colleagues of the UK NPM. This is an incredible tool to enable just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Elina. It's a real pleasure to hear your reflections and your remarks on what we've built. So let's show it to you. I will hand over to my excellent colleagues, Chelsea and Sarah, who will take you through a demonstration of the database.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many people here today as we launch the NPM reporting dashboard. Sarah and I have been actively involved in the development of this tool, and we're so happy to share a demo today on how it works. So the first thing to know is that the reporting dashboard can be accessed via the UK NPM website, as you can see on the screen. And from there, you can click on Reporting Dashboard in the menu at the top to navigate through the different sections. So Sarah is showing that on the screen. So there's a home page, a recommendations page, a dashboard page where we visualize the information, and a reports page and an organizations page as well. Sarah and I will take you through each of these pages to demonstrate their functionality. So I'll hand it over to Sarah to begin.
Thanks, Chelsea, and hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the launch. So as Chelsea said, this is our homepage, our landing page for the reporting dashboard. And next to this blurb about who we are, we've got this establishment map. And this shows every place in the UK that has been inspected or monitored by NPM bodies over the last 5 years. You can interact with this map by hovering over these little yellow dots. So if we head up here to the northeast of Scotland, for example, we've got HMP and YOI Grampian. We can see how many recommendations and reports are coming out of this establishment at this moment, and the top theme or tag coming out of the establishment. So in this example, we've got theme governance. Scrolling a bit further down, I'd like to draw your attention to our glossary, where we have put definitions of all of our data that we're using, our tags, and any abbreviations that you might come across in the recommendations. Because this dashboard contains recommendations and best practices across so many detention settings, we've used a wide variety of language to reflect this. So for example, instead of using segregation or solitary confinement, we've used the word isolation. We're also using the phrase secure children's homes. And while this is a legal definition of one such setting in England, we're using it to capture all secure settings that children are held in that are not YOI prison environments, but we are very aware that these legal definitions change across the 4 nations of the UK. We know that you all use different phrasings when you work, so we're also using the terms recommendation and best practices very broadly to capture any outputs, concerns, observations, good practices, notable positive practices, commendable practices. Scrolling slightly further down, we have a few instructional pieces here for you just to refresh your memory when you're using the database. So I'll now show you the recommendations page, which you can access through the navigation menu, as Chelsea mentioned, or you can simply press Explore the database. This will take you to this table, which is a single database of all recommendations and best practices made by NPM bodies over the last 5 years. And you can filter the data using this filter panel on the left-hand side.
Thanks for showing us that, Sarah. So let's try a few examples. So if we wanted to see filtering on women and recommendations relating to mental health across all settings, then we would go to the mental health section, and there's a few different tags relating to mental health. And the reason that we've done that is we want to make sure that we're able to drill down a little bit more deeply. So I'll select mental health. I've selected women, and I'll select recommendations only. If we're looking for areas of concern, then we would just select recommendations. And so I can see here now that we've got recommendations here. And then say I wanted to go, okay, actually, I only want to see this in England. Then I could filter on England, click filter again. And I'll see all of the recommendations with a population of women and mental health in England. And so then I can click into the recommendation itself and see more information about the recommendation. So here we can see that we've got the type, it's a recommendation, it's not a best practice. We've got the full text of the recommendation here, the setting, any tags, relevant tags for that recommendation, the population, the target of that recommendation, in this case, national leadership. So that would be, for example, the prison service. If it said local leadership, that would be the governor or any local teams in that establishment. And we've also got government, that's the third target. So we'll always be selecting the target of the recommendation. Then we've got the report that it came from, the nation, the type, whether it's a monitoring, inspection, or a thematic report, the establishment, the organization that made the recommendation, and the published date. So there's quite a lot of information in here about each recommendation. But if I wanted to see like all of the recommendations from a single report, then I could go to the reports page. So if I go to that menu, you can see reports, and that'll take me to a database of all of the reports. Let's switch over to the dashboard page quickly. So here we go, dashboard. The dashboard is really exciting because this is a place where we can visualize everything that we've got in the database. So here you can see, this is a testament to all the work, especially Sarah. She's been leading that 20,000 recommendations in there, almost 1,600 reports. And this is telling us which organizations have the reports and the tags. There are 3 sections of our dashboard. So if I go down, you can see there's page 1 of 3. So on the second page, we have this amazing map, and this is where we can actually see all of the different settings on a map and the recommendations made against those establishments. So here I've clicked on HMP-YOI Grampian, and I can see all of the recommendations made against that setting. But actually, if I zoom out a little bit, there are filters here. So if I wanted to find, say, an establishment that had really good practices around, say, like admission procedures, then I could say, perhaps I was a prison governor and I wanted to improve my admission procedures. I could select prisons, and then I could change the tag to entry to prison. I could select on that, so entry detention. And then I could go down to recommendation type and pick best practice. And now I can see that there are all kinds of settings that have got best practices that have been named based on the reporting done by NPM bodies. So here, priority key work for new arrivals in their first 4 weeks in prison, address very basic worries and help prisoners to cope. So there's one, but you could click on any of these circles, and the bigger the circle is, the more best practices that have been listed in that setting on that specific tag. So playing around with these filters is great. You can visualize it on the map. I really like using that. And the third page is also really interesting. So this is our chart builder.
We've found out that there's just far too much to see of this dashboard that we could possibly fit into one demonstration. But thank you, Chelsea and Sarah. It was brilliant to see how it works and how everyone can use it. I'd love to invite Professor Nick Hardwick to share some words with us.
Thank you, and good morning, afternoon or evening, as we said to everyone. It's really great, really pleased to be a part of this. And I'm lucky. I've had a demonstration myself, and this is a genuinely, it's a fantastic piece of work. I think it's really astoundingly good, and the work that's gone into making it happen is obviously been huge. So I do want to say I really congratulate everybody who's been involved and strongly recommend that people use it. I think it's a real game changer, I think. I couldn't agree more with what Elina had to say in her introductions, and I think one of the things I really like about the kind of OPCAT is it's a really it always seems to me it's like a really practical sort of guide to what you need to do to make preventive monitoring work. It's relatively jargon free, it's really understandable. And those key principles that Elina referred to about regular visits by independent bodies with a focus on prevention, I think that's so right. They've got that so right. And the critical point, right, is, as Elina said, if it's about prevention, right? So I used to find when I was like chief inspector of prisons, I think when people were looking from the outside, they thought a good result was when we went somewhere and found it kind of terrible and we made lots of recommendations to try and put it right. That's what I thought. I thought success was when we went to somewhere and that because our visits were regular, they knew that we would be coming back. So they'd actually fixed the problems before we got there. We had prevented things going wrong. We weren't reporting on problems or naming and shaming. We were helping them prevent things from going wrong. And it was the regularity of the visits that enabled that to kind of take place. And that's where kind of recommendations come in. So actually you make your recommendation and they know you're going to come back because your visits are regular to check it's happening. And what's also important, just on recommendations, I think sometimes visiting bodies have to be so mindful that of ensuring the kind of quality of their own work. And sometimes I think looking back, recommendations that are made aren't necessarily very good or very helpful. And I think the point that often gets neglected in Article 25 of the OPCAT, which talks about entering into the state party entering into a dialogue with the NPM about the implementation of recommendations, is actually an important and sometimes neglected aspect of the OPCAT. I mean, we know ourselves, if somebody simply tells us what to do with like no discussion about whether it's workable, we're not going to buy into it in the same way that if someone's had a dialogue with us. And I think that point about dialogue is a really important and I think often quite neglected aspect of the OPCAT that needs looking at. So if you do that, I think you're then in a position where you got better kind of quality control over your recommendations. And then for the database, where I think that kicks in, I see it as having, well, sort of three or four kind of key purposes. there's going to be a really interesting picture emerge that will help us really understand how NPMs and other kind of monitoring bodies have developed over time and how our priorities have changed over that time. And again, I think that then will feed back into the quality of the work that we're doing. I mean, I feel I've only just scratched the surface, really. I think this is a really exciting tool, and genuinely, heartily congratulate the team who made this possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. That was really appreciated. I hand over to Alice O'Fee from Robiquity, who's going to talk a little bit about the development of the database. Robiquity were one of the tech teams that helped bring it to fruition. I'll hand over to Alice. Alice, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. If there are supporting slides, feel free to get those up, but we don't need to bore everyone with them, Sam. I'm Alice O'Fee. I'm the delivery lead at Robiquity, and as Sam mentioned, I led on the delivery of the NPM recommendations database and reporting dashboard, which is the internal tool that the UK NPM team use to capture the recommendations from the numerous NPM bodies and enables sort of the reports in the dashboard that you've seen a little bit of so far today, and we'll get to see more of during the Q&A. We worked in collaboration with different teams, including the Ministry of Justice digital team, to make this delivery a success. Their team led on taking what we built at Robiquity and surfacing it on the website that you can see today. And of course, I also had the absolute pleasure of working very closely with the UK NPM team, who you've heard from throughout this morning, and have been working very hard, Chelsea and Sarah especially, to populate the database behind the scenes. I do work for a technology company, but the favourite thing about my job is definitely the people, and to get to work on projects like this that really drive positive change in meaningful ways is amazing. So thank you for having me today. I will quickly introduce Robiquity. So we're a low-code and AI company that work with you to build solutions using the right technology. We're technology agnostic. However, one of the real game changers for us as a company has been the use of low-code technologies to accelerate development and deliver valuable solutions with speed, such as the technology we can achieve using Microsoft's Power Platform, which was used for this solution. If we hop over to the next slide, you'll just see an overview of the Microsoft Power Platform. So Microsoft is one of our partners at Robiquity, and what it allows us to do is build from a singular platform with different components that integrate together, so we can work in a modern and agile way using these technology components as building blocks behind the scenes, so it can support the reporting and business analytics that you've seen today, internal app development, process automation, and external facing websites. And these building blocks of technology are what we've used to bring together this solution. If we go to the next slide, as I mentioned, this delivery was truly about collaboration with our Robiquity team and the NPM working together. As Sam mentioned at the beginning, there was a lot of work that went into this, both before and after our Robiquity team were engaged with the NPM in terms of surfacing the reports that are now publicly available. However, using the Power Platform, what we were able to do was to go from an idea when we first met Sam and Chelsea at the end of last year to something that was ready for release within a couple of months. So we worked with the UK NPM team to define requirements up front, and we understood that the core design needed to be that single source of truth of the NPM recommendations to surface meaningful information and create the reports to enable data-led decisions, to make improvements, to strengthen the protection of people deprived of their liberty in the UK. And as I said, low code really is a game changer for that acceleration. So although we understood the key requirements, what the use of the Power Platform allowed us to do was bring concepts to life really early doors. So we were able to take a requirements document to something we could demo and work from. We built a proof of concept to validate our understanding and demonstrate the art of the possible while we were still in that very early design phase at the beginning of the project. And what I think this did was it broke down any barriers that there could have been between our expertise as a technology company and the NPM team's expertise in landscapes of deprivation of liberty and prevention of torture, and allowed us to seamlessly bring together different skills. It really was a partnership and a co-creation to get the solution where it is today. And throughout the process, we were able to demo changes on a near daily basis with the team and refine requirements, showing iterative changes and improvements, working in an agile but pragmatic way within the development phase. We were also able to deploy to a test environment within a few weeks to get the team hands-on access to the internal toolset, which enabled improved feedback and ensured whatever we were building behind the scenes brought their vision to life. And now we've got the data foundations in place, we can start to explore the use of AI-driven insights for interpretation of results with confidence ratings, to really start to think about supercharging reporting capabilities for potential future phases of delivery as well. As it's been mentioned before, the use case is really reusable to bring different sources of data together and surface the right information to make informed decisions that are backed by data and can have that positive impact. So if anyone does want to speak to me about the solution in more detail, please just reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn as Alice O'Fee. And if we hop to the final slide, you'll see my email address as well as aof@robiquity.com if anyone wants to get into the technical details offline. Thanks for having me today. Sam, I'll hand over back to yourself. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Alice. That was really interesting and useful to see how the database has sort of come to fruition from an idea of some very non-techie people and how it's been translated through your genius at Robiquity. So thank you very much. And I would love to hand over to Jacqui Durkin, Chief Inspector of Criminal Justice, Northern Ireland.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations and add my congratulations to Sherry, Sam, Sarah, Chelsea, Alice, and the whole NPM team. I think I've named most of them. On the UK NPM dashboard and database. So for everyone involved in developing and delivering and launching it this morning, thank you. As Chief Inspector of a small inspectorate with a reach right across the criminal justice system in Northern Ireland, I very much welcome the creation of this NPM asset and resource to share information and identify common issues and recommendation trends and places of detention. I very much see this creation of the dashboard and databases belonging to all of us as NPM members, that we're all responsible for the information that goes into it, and we need to use it the way it is intended. So I think while Sam and the team have created it, I very much see it as belonging to all of us and responsible for how it's used and how it grows. I make no apology for saying that it's also a great opportunity to see how other NPM inspectorates and monitoring bodies have crafted effective and impactful recommendations for improvement, and of course making reporting on examples of good practice. It's an opportunity for me. I certainly see it as an opportunity to raise awareness of and consolidate and share our own work with a wider network and with other inspectorates right across, not only within the UK but internationally as well. As a Chief Inspector and in our inspection team, we can't possibly read every inspection or review report, but I think the database provides a really valuable resource to identify recommendations and good practice and reports where we want to do some wider research and reading, as Nick had mentioned, that informs the quality of our own inspection work. So I think that will be really important moving forward. Of course, I'd rather be in a position where I'm providing assurance and where I'm reporting on good practice rather than making and unfortunately repeating recommendations. But I think the database and the dashboard will give us an indication of that journey that some establishments are on, that other monitoring bodies are seeing, and looking at those trends and analysis across the UK. So I think that will be really valuable for us moving forward and very much welcome this important asset that we now have. I believe the database will only be as good as how we use it and what we make of it. So I think it is really important that we do sweat this asset and ensure we use it as the knowledge bank to educate, develop and inform ourselves as it's intended to be. I know it has an internal, if you like, NPM audience, but it very much has an external reach as well. And I hope everyone uses their network, whether it's the bodies or places that you inspect, or it's a wider stakeholder group of perhaps volunteering community organisations, or wherever your reach is. If you think that someone isn't aware of it, to at least try and use your own network to develop knowledge about it and make people aware that it's here and it's here to be used. So I hope that you all use it too. Please tell as many people as you can about it, use it, and I'm sure Sam and the team will be coming back to ask us what we think of it in the future. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you for that. We'll hand straight over to Rob, Deputy Director of Rule of Law and International Rights at the Ministry of Justice. Rob.
There we go, making sure you could hear me. Thanks, Sam. So it falls to me to sort of put the footnote on this, really, and Nick and Jacqui have said a lot of what I would want to say already. First off, I want to be really clear of my responsibilities in the Ministry of Justice. They involve neither fire alarms nor Microsoft Teams, but they do very happily involve sponsoring the National Preventative Mechanism, and it's something that's been a real success story for us. The UK has always been strongly committed to OPCAT. We are one of the early proponents. We were involved in its drafting. We were one of the first countries to notify the UN of the designation of our NPM back in 2003. It goes back a very long way. And this is very much another first for us today. The challenge of our NPM, having this sort of network of bodies across different jurisdictions, has always been to try to bring coherence and sophistication to that landscape. The notes I've been given here by my team tell me that it's over 5,000 recommendations per year. That is a lot. And trying to keep track of that and actually make them useful and make them accessible. Because I think one of the key points there is not just that recommendations should be seen by the target of those recommendations, but also, you know, it's the old point about daylight being the best disinfectant, that actually if things are seen publicly, if they are seen widely and accessibly and people can work with them, that gives them power, that gives them force, that gives them effect. So it's great that we've got this dashboard. It is really the first dashboard of such ambition globally. I think there's still a lot we're going to need to do to work with it, to see all the things it can achieve, all the things that we can make it do for us. I really hope, Sam, that this is a first step and not a last step, if I can put it like that as well for you. And particularly also in making the NPM's work more visible as well. I think that is something that is tremendously important in this space as well, that we have this great organisation, this great network, and it needs to be seen and appreciated. I also really do welcome the collaboration between the NPM and your team, Sam, in particular, and the MOJ that's made this possible. I know we've had some interesting exchanges on that subject, and I'm very glad we've got to fruition and we've got to this launch, and it's a superb tool. So I'm going to be very brief and leave you to the Q&A. I want to thank everybody, including particularly the NPM team and Sam yourself, who's had this idea and driven this forward. It's a superb piece of work. Many congratulations.
Well, thank you, Rob. I really appreciate those remarks. We're going to hand back over to Chelsea Keenan. Chelsea's just going to show a little bit more of the demo while we're incorporating some of the questions that have already come in. Please do feel free to keep them coming, and we'll just show you a little bit more of its functionality that we weren't able to show you at the beginning there. So Chelsea, please.
Thanks, Sam. So can you give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen? Thank you. Grand. Okay, so we were talking, I'll just take us back to this dashboard page. So here again, we would click on the reporting dashboard on our website and select dashboard. I'm already in that page. And that's the final slide on this dashboard that was built for us. And yeah, this dashboard, we heard from Alice earlier, Robiquity had built this amazing dashboard for the back end, and then it was recreated by our Justice Digital partners for the front end. So we're so pleased with this. It's really exciting. So what I've done here is I've selected tags, which is like the theme of each recommendation, really. And then I've chosen total recommendations and a pie chart. I have filtered on immigration detention. So what this is showing me now is which tags are the most prominent in immigration detention. I haven't clicked on anything else like population or a nation or anything, but I can see here that the time in detention is the top tag right now in immigration detention, followed by access to information, and the third highest is safeguarding. Nick had asked a question in the Q&A around the dates that are in here. So we can filter on dates, and you would just do that through the publish date. So right now we've got all of the recommendations from 2020 to date in the dashboard. And I'll let Sam maybe answer more of the questions around how far back it will go. But for now, it's everything from 2020 onwards. So I can put in the date here for if I wanted to know everything in 2020, what the top themes were in 2020. So 2020, and here we go. So now this is just showing me for that 1 year. And so then it was access to information, safeguarding, and translation and interpretation were the main issues. But in 2024, so if I just switch that over to 2020, here we go. So in 2024, what were the main issues? Maintenance, governance, and time in detention. So you can use this in all kinds of ways. You can change it to a column. You can change it to a bar chart to be able to get different types of visuals, and then filter on really anything you like. So I really encourage people to play around with this, and whatever you're interested in, you'll be able to find it. And then when you click on a bar, like say privacy, I want to see what the recommendations are there. All of the recommendations around privacy will show up down here at the bottom. So you can have a chance to read through what the recommendations are around that issue. So if I click there, it'll take me out of that back to all the recommendations. So I've written down a few of the questions. Sophie had asked around, well, what about if I wanted to find something about YOIs alone? So if I go back to our recommendations page then, and you wanted to find YOIs, so we haven't separated those out with something that you could filter on, but what I would actually suggest is if you just do an asterisk and type YOI for a keyword search, and you do a search, what I come up with here is anything that's got, here we've got all these reports have YOI in the title, and so all the recommendations then come up in this way. And then you could use the filters to filter on anything else. Okay, well, I would actually like to know about bullying in YOI setting. So here we go. Now I've got bullying. So there's all kinds of different ways that you would be able to sort of search for what you want, even if, you know, I think building a database that is this complex, we couldn't add every single detail in there. I think we would never get the data into the system. And it's even when you add it, it adds more complexity, but there are ways to find that. Similarly around gender, we do have, for example, the population of women. So you can filter on that. There's young people and children. But if you wanted to look it up in a different way, then you could always do a keyword search through the search engine.
I might just address a couple of other questions in the Q&A, and please do keep them coming in. Elina, who's just messaged me, has asked around confidential reports or the back end of the functionality, and that also comes to a point that somebody's asked around responses to recommendations. So we do have the functionality to keep reports confidential in the back end that Alice and her team have designed for us, and we're also keeping responses to recommendations in that unpublished section. Now, there aren't actually any reports from the NPM that we don't publish. We used to not be able to publish externally Ofsted reports, but that has now changed, a good step in transparency for secure children's homes. But all reports output of the NPM are published, but we reserve the right to keep things confidential if need be. And similarly, we're collecting responses to recommendations, but we're not publishing them at this stage because they haven't been independently verified across the board of completion with recommendations. So it's mopping a lot of that up. Just take a moment to scan the questions there. Lots of congratulations, which is gratefully received, and a few points there around waiting, and I suppose that does come to my sort of closing remarks with 1 minute to spare. That we'll respond to a lot of those questions in writing, but Rob's point there around I hope this is the beginning and not the end. He sort of stole my line because this is very much the beginning and not the end. We are launching this today, but we really want your feedback. We really want to know how could we refine it for your user purpose? How could we use it in a more meaningful and impactful way? So very much the beginning. Please do write to us. There's a section on the database for feedback. We want to receive it. We want to hear your comments, your ideas, your suggestions. We are going to update this in real time every time we have new information. We're also going to produce quarterly thematic analysis documents that will look at the key trends and themes across the reporting window. And we're going to do a second version of this in due course. So we really want to get your feedback and get your knowledge and your support in like I say, our shared ambition. So thank you very much for joining us. That's 12 o'clock in where I am, and it's been a real pleasure. Can I thank our speakers once again for your reflections? Can I thank all of you for your interest and time? You can access the database through the NPM website, and we'll be emailing all attendees out a link so that you can access it directly. Have a play around, let us know what you think. And thank you again for your time, effort, enthusiasm and energy. Thanks again to my team for their exceptional work on this too. So thank you, and I wish you a good afternoon.